Okay, so what we're going to work on is trying to figure out how to rig this skin between the shoulder and the wrist in the bird's wing. And so what I've done is I've copied my joints out so I can experiment with them. And I've got a polygon plane that I'm planning on using. I'm going to just make a strip out of this. Let's see. So that's say 10, and then yeah, that's what we want. Okay, then I'm going to scale this out. I'm going to make it fit this space. Right here. This is no, this is not going to be the ribbon deformer just yet. This is just going to be using geometry to bind. Okay, and this is not a permanent setup. This is just for experimentation purposes, just so you guys know. I'm going to try to rotate this and get it kind of lined up in there. Okay? Maybe add no. I'll leave it at 10 subdivisions. We may decide to change that later on. Okay? Now, I've got a little mesh right there, and we can use this geometry right here to drive the shape of this wing. And because this is really simple, ideally, it will make this is easier to control because it's really simple. And so we can use this relatively simple piece of geometry and skin it relatively easy, and then we can use that to drive this more complex geometry over here. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to get familiar with aim constraints. I'm thinking this is going to be the way to go. So to drive this geometry, I need two joints, one at the shoulder and one at the wrist, that always point to each other. They need to always look at each other. Okay, so I'm going to grab both of these joints and I'm going to press Control D to duplicate them. Go to my hypergraph, frame my selection. Okay, and so here's the joints I'm currently working with. Now, you always want to work really hard at making your original set of joints just perfect. Okay, like by setting your rotation orders, your joint orients and stuff like that. Okay, make sure the placement is excellent. And then after that, if you need a joint in another spot, either close to or maybe right on top of, which is really common in rigging, then you can just duplicate those. You don't have to try to make two identical ones. You can just duplicate it, and then you have two identical ones. Okay, so I'm going to unparent these joints over here. And I don't need this joint 8. And I don't need this joint 6 here, which is, you know, the elbow and the tip of the wrist. Or you could call it the hand joint if you wanted. I just need these two. And I'm going to parent both of these to their identical joint in this hierarchy. Okay? So I can see that joints, if I click on joint 7, I probably should do some renaming real quick. Okay? So this is my shoulder. Underscore joint, and this one is my shoulder look at underscore joint. This one is the elbow. I'm not using my naming convention. There we go. And then this is the wrist, underscore JNT. This is the, call it wrist tip. And this is the wrist look at shoulder underscore joint. And that makes me think I want to rename this one. The shoulder look at wrist joint. Okay, so that way I don't get confused later on. And this is going to be the wing bind geometry, or wing geo underscore bind. Okay, now in order to make this easier to see, well, not just yet, but yeah, never mind. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate the shoulder look at and the wrist look at, and I'm going to parent them to their originals, and then I'm going to translate them towards the other joint. Okay, so they're moving in the direction towards the joint they're going to be looking at. Now this is all mysterious right now, but these two joints are just so that we can see where they're pointing. Right now they're not looking at each other, right? Because this one should be pointed to right here, and this one should be pointed to right here. Okay, so we're going to select the two joints that we want to control this mesh. Well, actually, before we do that, we want to create some locators, because you need a little bit more information to create an aim constraint than you do the other constraints. So I'm going to create a locator, switch to my translate tool, and I'm going to snap it to this joint. I'm going to duplicate it, snap that one to this joint, and then I'm going to select them both. I want them both to move up. Okay, and I'll explain the purpose of these here in a minute. Okay, and I'm going to parent those to their respective joints. So this could go, this is the shoulder look at aim, look at, let's see, look at aim constraint. Okay, so we have shoulder look at wrist underscore up vector. That's what we'll call this one. Okay, don't let the name intimidate you. Okay, and this is going to be the wrist look at shoulder underscore up vector. Okay, now we need to parent these. So the shoulder look at needs to be parented to the shoulder joint, and the wrist look at needs to be parented to the wrist. Okay, now